I now call the Carroll County Board of Commissioners work session to order. The first thing we have a guest, is Blake Doss from, he's our government liaison for Greystone Power, and he has a short presentation on broadband for us, which I know we are all interested in. So if you'll please come forward.
Yes, ma'am. So my name is Blake Doss. I'm the Government Affairs Director for Greystone Power. Just started a couple months ago. Thank you all for giving me a few minutes of your time. I know y'all have got some more important business than this, but I wanted to give you a quick update on a project we're very, very excited about. Greystone obviously doesn't have a lot of members here in Carroll County, but we've got 2,600, and they're obviously very important to us. And so we're very excited to announce we're going into the broadband business. We're going to do a pilot program, reach about 5,000 plus locations, which a good portion of that is projected to be Carroll County. Now, I will say we're still in the conceptual phase right now, so nothing's been finalized yet, but we're very excited about it. I should probably take a second to thank our board of directors and our CEO, Gary Miller, for having the vision to do this. You all know broadband's very important, and if it's not a silver bullet to a lot of problems, it's definitely a critical foundation for better health outcomes, education outcomes, economic development opportunities, quality of life. So we're very excited to do this. We're going to create a subsidiary that will operate the broadband business, but Greystone will own 100% of the fiber. So it'll all be in-house. And we're going to stay within our electric service area. So I will remind y'all this is proposed. I'll get a finalized version to you probably the first couple of quarters when we get here, but this is the important piece. And Commissioner Reynolds, I think this is mainly in your area.
Yeah.
So we're going to be going down Highway 5, down to about Wampum Lake, and then over here, I believe it's Jones Mill Road, down to Hutchison Ferry. And then we'll do middle mile up Liberty Road toward Villa Rica, Highway 61. We'll get a little bit there, but we're very excited about this. We're going to offer 3 speed tiers, 100 megabits per second, 1 gigabit, and 2 gigabit. So we're going to be very reliable, very fast. Our speeds will be very competitive, and our prices, although they haven't been finalized, will be competitive as well. Probably the most important thing I'll say is our electric rates will not be impacted by this. So I want to throw that out there. But we're very happy, 2,600 members in Carroll County. I think we're going to hit a good portion of them in this initial pilot phase. And as we get going and ramp up, we'll get you more finalized documents. And we hope to light up our first customers 2024. And we'll get y'all some more updates and information in person via our website, all that. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any. And otherwise, I'll get out of your hair.
Well, first, as you say, affecting mainly my district, and thanks, because I get several calls, and it's good to know there will be a solution on the way.
Yes.
So thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What could I tell them as far as, I know you said 2024, but any more specific time as far as when it would start or where you'll go, how many will be affected the first 12 months? Or?
So we're looking to start make-ready work probably within the first 2 quarters. The engineering work, we'll see where we're at with that. As far as final information, we're not there yet. Mm-hmm. I do expect we'll probably start in South Fulton and start construction west and then north. But all of that's open to change. My bosses probably don't even like the fact I said that. So.
Good. That's good to hear.
So Blake, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you and I had talked since you just came in the job like 2 months ago. Just give us a little bit of how you got where you are now.
Yes, ma'am. So originally from Bremen, Georgia, so Carrollton's very near and dear to me. Family has owned business in Carrollton for decades. So I'm glad to be back home. I moved to Rome after I went to West Georgia, got a history degree. Then I started writing at a newspaper. Decided that didn't make enough money for me, so went to the State House and worked for the government, and did that for 6 years. Then I got married and decided I needed to buy a house, so made the transition to this. But I enjoy the public service aspect, so I'm glad the EMCs have strong part in that, and I'm glad I get to keep doing that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks, Blake. I'm now going to call Alicia Searcy, the Finance Director, to go over our financials.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have before us the statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in fund balance for ending the month of October. We ended the month in pretty good shape, where our revenues were at $20,917,643. That's about 31% of our budget. Compared to last year, we were at $19,366,000. We're a little behind as far as a percentage. We're a little behind where we were last year, even though our numbers, percentage of budget, were behind last year, only slightly. I'm not concerned about that, but just to mention that revenues as a percentage of budget's coming in just a little slower. Our expenses are at $22,634,000 for the year to date, compared to $19,115,000 last year. Our expenses are right on budget, 33.6%. That's a little bit more than where we should be. We should be at 33.3, but we've paid some one-time annual fees for our insurance, and that was a big payment. So there again, not concerned about where we are as far as our expenditures year to date. We did complete our jail barrier system at the jail. All of that's installed now, and the final payment is not shown in this financial statement. It should be in the November statement, but we're really glad. That was a big project that y'all agreed to fund out of the general fund, and we're really happy to get that going. On the SPLOST side, we have been spending some money. We continue to do some road work. We're getting started on the fire station, moving forward on it. We got an architect coming on at the admin building, so we're starting to move forward on that project. And since last month, it's not reflected on this report, but we have bought a significant amount of automobiles. Y'all agreeing to allow us to go to different dealerships has really helped. And I'm not sure. I think we're down to 4 or 5 vehicles left to purchase, but most of our 3/4 ton vehicles, which we were having a very difficult time finding, we found one here and 2 there, and we have found 1 1.5-ton vehicle, and I think all of our half tons we've purchased. So we've gotten a lot of newer vehicles on the road and replaced some that were very high mileage. And at some point we'll probably be having an auction for those. We're also moving forward on the project out at the rec department with the new field that we're putting in there. So that kind of summarizes where we are financially.
Ms. Searcy, I wanted to make a comment on the revenue side for interest, and you and I have had some conversations in your office about this, and I know you've got some other items on the agenda today that you're going to be talking about, but we had taken such a hard hit on our interest with banks not paying a lot, so we had set our yearly budget for that at $39,084, and in 3 months we've already exceeded that at $39,557. And that may seem like an insignificant number, but obviously that number is going to grow, and then everything that you have been putting your effort into and working on some other ways of, we've got this large cash balance sitting there, what can we do to get something besides almost nothing? And you've spent a lot of time and effort, and I'm not just saying that trying to make you feel good, which you should, but I think it goes to show when we put our heads together and staff like yourself, when you work on these items, how big of a difference you can make in the change in our budget to say, look, we can't accept this, what else could we do? Because you could easily just sit there and say, well, that's what the banks are paying and there's nothing we can do about it. But you've done an exceptional job, and I wanted to point that out. And I think that the taxpayers need to realize too that when we hit an area like this, our staff really steps up and tries to make corrections to help the county, and I want to thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. The feds help with that too.
Any questions? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll move into our agenda for Tuesday night. The first thing is a Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act resolution, and we have Loy Howard here from Tanner to address this with us.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We are seeking your approval for a $35 million bond issue that allow us to do some equipment purchases and some software upgrades. $20 million in December, $15 million in May of '23. It's 4.25%. It's a 10-year term, has a 2-year option to repay. Bank of America is making this very attractive for us to do that now. Part of that is our strength of our balance sheet. Our debt to capitalization ratio is 19.5%, which is best in class in the industry. The tax exempt requires your approval. However, you are not backing this bond issue. And so we respectively request your support and happy to answer any questions.
Well, seeing and hearing none, are you okay with putting this on a consent agenda for Tuesday night?
Yeah.
Thank you, Loy, for coming, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 8.2, we have Captain Ken Reeves with some sheriff vehicles.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to ask that we be able to replace a vehicle that was involved in an accident. Insurance company has paid the county, and I do have a chance to order them. The ordering is still open at this point in time, if y'all approve that.
Any questions for Captain Reeves? Well, seeing and hearing none, is this good to be put on a consent agenda?
Yep.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank y'all.
All right, 8.3, we have Thad Ferguson, Recreation Director, here for a consideration of approval of a donation to the City of Bowden.
Good evening to all. So over the past month or so, Melissa Payne, our gymnastics coordinator, and myself have been in contact with the City of Bowden. They're going through some staff changes in regards to their gymnastics program. We went down about a month ago, spoke with them, ate lunch with them, talked about their program where we could help them with new ideas, and then also they had a list of equipment pieces that they were trying to get ready to purchase. So Melissa said, send that list to us. Let's see if we can help you in any way or guide you in the right direction. So after looking over that list, there were a few items that we had that were either in storage or just extra stuff that we have not used and don't really have the need for them at the moment. So we were looking at their list, and there were 6 pieces or 6 items that we could help donate with your approval. Just to kind of clarify some of these. The first one basically was something that was donated to us, basically a cheer floor. So if you ever see a gym competition, it's just what the girls are flipping on. The air track, pretty self-explanatory there. The loose pit foam, so basically they have a foam pit that the kids are able to jump in. These are just the squares that go in the pit to absorb you jumping in. The vault table is probably the biggest item, and that's basically girls are running down, jump on trampoline, hands on the vault, flip over. A kip bar is basically a set of uneven bars, but this one just kind of sits on the ground to allow the younger gymnasts to learn how to roll over the bar without being so high up off the ground. And then the ladder stall is basically just a fancy name for a gymnastics pull-up bar for strength and conditioning type stuff. So these 6 items we would like to donate to the city of Bowden with your approval.
Commissioners, any questions? If not, are you good with putting this on a consent agenda? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thad.
Thank you.
Thank you for voting too. 8.4 is a GEMA hazard mitigation grant, and 8.5 is weather radio vendor. So our EMA Director Tim has both those items, so we'll start with 8.4 and then move to 8.5.
Okay, thank you. Chairman and Board of Commissioners, we received a grant from GEMA and Homeland Security for weather radios. And in the amount of $15,470, I believe it was. And we're asking for y'all to approve that we accept that, y'all accept that, then we can move forward with it if y'all do.
I appreciate you getting the grant out here for us.
It was everyone working together. It was a team effort.
Every little bit counts.
Yes, sir.
15,000 adds up here or there, so that's good.
We try to do these weather radio grants about every 10 years. The last one we did was in 2010.
And then 8.5 is how you want to spend the grant.
We would ask that we do a sole source vendor on that with Metropolitan Communications. The reason for that, we would like to buy Midland radios, and they're the only radio service that programs the radios. We tried it one time where we programmed the radios, and I'll be honest with you, it was a mess. And so we'd ask that we be able to purchase those Midland radios through Metropolitan Communications for the grant amount, and that they would be Carroll County and the surrounding counties put in the weather radios to alert if there was severe weather.
Thank you.
These weather radios are designed to go in critical facilities like schools and government offices and stuff like that, and also to give to senior citizens.
So Commissioners, do y'all have a problem with me putting this on a consent? 8.4, the GEMA hazard mitigation grant, and then using that grant for the weather radio vendor of Metropolitan Communications. Good with that on consent? Okay, great. Thank you, Tim, so much. Okay, 8.6 is a budget amendment. I will call Alicia Searcy, the Finance Director, back up.
This is the budget amendment that covers the expenses at the end of the year. We've completed our audit, and we had a couple of areas that we needed to increase some expenses, but we also have the revenue to offset that. The general fund was a small amount that we needed to increase for a tower at Whitesburg that got hit by lightning right at the very end of the year after we had done the final budget amendment. So we got that included, and then the others are just some revenue accounts, the sheriff's narcotics accounts and some other special revenue accounts that we don't keep in the Board of Commissioners office. And this is just a typical year-end budget amendment that we do every year. So we've advertised it, and we're prepared to get that done. This will be the final step in getting our audit complete.
Just one quick question, Lisa, if I can. The capital lease increase, can you explain that?
Yeah, we actually, we implemented GASB 87 this year, and that was a restructure in the way that capital leases are reported. And so we had to take the current portion and report it back in the prior year. So
okay.
That would be the first lease payment that was due this year that had to be reported back into last year. And then everything should settle out going forward.
So it's a recording thing, not an increase in debt service or
Correct.
something? Yeah.
It's just
okay.
an adjustment in the way that we have to do our reporting now to adhere to GASB 87. this was the first year that we had to implement it.
Okay.
Are y'all good with putting 8.6, the budget amendment, on a consent agenda for Tuesday night? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So Alicia, we'll leave you up here for 8.7 and 8.8.
We're asking for permission to do business with American Commerce Bank and Southern States Bank. They're both local community banks that have called upon us to do business with them. They're offering us a very good interest rate, 3.25% to 3.5%, which is more than most other banks are offering. They're doing that because they need deposits, and they need deposits so they can loan money to businesses in Carroll County. And they have made a commitment to loan that money back if we'll put money on deposit with them. So our goal would be to put about $5 million at each bank, and we're going to protect that through a program called CDARS. So we'll actually spread that money around over 20 different banks. So we have the $250,000 FDIC insurance covered. But since they brought the money in, they will get to report that money on their balance sheet, which gives them the ability to loan that money back to small businesses in our community. So we felt like this was a win-win situation for Carroll County to get a better rate, better return on their investment, and for the constituents of Carroll County to have more funds available to borrow, whether it's a personal loan or a small business loan. Hopefully that'll help the people of Carroll County to grow their business if it happens to be a business loan.
So better return without investment loss risk.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's very healthy for all the reasons you just mentioned. I won't go back through them, but I think it's a good thing.
So are we good with putting 8.7, American Commerce Bank resolution, and 8.8, Southern State Bank resolution, which would be doing business with both of them? Are we good with putting both of those on a consent agenda for Tuesday night? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Okay, now we're going to move into 8.9, which is Project Excalibur tax abatement, and we'll call County Attorney Stacy Blackman to present this for us.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. This is a project the Carrollton Payroll Development Authority is asking for the support of the Board of Commissioners for this project. It's an expansion of an existing industry. It's still confidential. The name, the company has not announced it yet. It's Carroll Tomorrow and Karen Handel and the authority have worked very hard with the state to secure this expansion for our community because the industry apparently had another facility in another state. So luckily Carroll County was selected for the expansion. And the incentives offered are in line with what was offered to the company before. There are approximately 30 new jobs and the investment's approximately $65,000 over a 10-year, approximately $5 million is the capital expenditure investment by the company, and the abatement would be approximately $65,000 over a 10-year period.
Ms. Blackman, in clarification that we have done on some other abatements that's come before us, technically we're being asked for the blessing or to support this, but in reality, I guess the Payroll Development Authority, they have certain state statutes that give them authority actually to help make some of these decisions. So the decision is not solely laying at the feet of the Board of Commissioners. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct. This is a constitutional development authority, so the property that they own is tax exempt. So they're just asking for your support for this project.
Thank you.
And I do serve on that board. The city of Carrollton traditionally has had the chairman of the Carroll County Board of Commissioners sit on that board as a voting member, so.
And by the way, the city council expressed their support at their recent meeting for this same project.
So if y'all are good, we'll put this on a consent agenda for Tuesday night. Okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. All right, we're going to move into several appointments that we have. 8.10 is an appointment to the West Georgia Regional Airport Board. Lester Harmon is currently serving, and we had 2 other citizens that expressed interest. So I will look for either someone to make a suggestion this evening, or we'll wait till Tuesday night.
If we could, Madam Chairman, I think maybe wait till Tuesday unless there's another commissioner that would like to speak up, just to have a little bit more time.
Okay. All right, 8.11 is the Health Board. Cindy Barge is our current appointee and has expressed interest in staying on. I did not receive any other interest from the board or from citizens. Are you good with reappointing her and putting her on the consent agenda? Okay. Okay. 8.12 is the Water Authority, and we had 4 terms expiring on the 31st. And let's see if I can pull this up. So the at-large is usually the chairman's, and that is Aaron McWhorter, who has agreed to serve again, and I'd like to reappoint him. District 1, Commissioner McClendon. Reappoint Joe Neal, okay. And then District 5,
I'd like to
reappoint Barry Huff.
Barry, yeah.
Okay, great. And then District 6.
Reappoint Johnny Tanner, please.
Okay. All right, so we'll put all 4 of these on a consent agenda for Tuesday night. Back to my 8.12. Okay, it was 1, 5, and 6, okay. All right, 8.8 is the appointment for Three Rivers Regional, and that is Kevin Hemphill, who has filled an unexpired term for us, and now he's actually up for a full term. He has expressed interest again, and I've not gotten any other input from any other citizens or for this board. So are y'all good with leaving Kevin in this position? Okay, so we'll leave that on, put that on a consent agenda. And that is Three Rivers. Okay, 8.9 is the appointment of the Board of Tax Assessors. And we did receive a letter from the Board of Tax Assessors to reappoint Sandra, asking us that they would like us to reappoint Sandra Houston, and she has agreed to be reappointed. I've not received any other interest from citizens or this board. Are y'all good with putting Sandra on consent agenda for Tuesday night? Okay. 8.15 is elections and registration. We had James Gamble, who's been serving, I think he told me maybe close to 30 years, has decided he doesn't want to do it anymore. So we do have an opening there. Catherine Huckabee has agreed to continue service if so chosen to, and the Board of Elections actually has recommended they'd like to keep Catherine. So we do have an opening for James Gamble. I've not had any citizen input, but I believe Commissioner Fuller has a nomination. Do you want to do that tonight, or you want to wait till Tuesday? We can do it Tuesday. Okay. So we'll wait Tuesday on that one. All right, so.
I can go ahead and renominate Catherine tonight, but whatever.
Yeah, so Catherine will leave her on as a
Yeah.
consent, okay. And then that leads us to 8.16, the subdivision ordinance, and I'll call Avery Jackson the county attorney.
Chairman and Commissioners, we have before you for your consideration some proposed changes to the exemptions to the subdivision ordinance of Carroll County. Again, we're not revising the actual subdivision ordinance, just the exemptions to the ordinance. We first talked about some proposed changes to the subdivision exemptions last year. Last year, that was tabled for further review by staff at that time. You might remember that we met in July at the 911 Center. Staff was there to discuss possible changes and to get input and feedback. The press was there and a lot of citizens were present there too at that time. Based on the discussion at 911 that we all had together, staff went back and developed some bullet points to circulate to the public for a public meeting. Staff developed those bullet points in September. We advertised and held a public meeting before the board to get all the citizens' input on this topic and subject. And based on the public input from that public meeting, staff went back and made a couple of revisions to the bullet points, which we went over at the last work session last month. And from those bullet points that we discussed last month, we have we have put those bullet points into the actual ordinance language, and that's what's before you for your consideration now. The only change that was made was one addition. It's an exemption for large lots that are larger than 10 acres. Based on some subsequent discussions with citizens and concerns about these large acres and large acre lots and whether they can meet the requirement for lots under our subdivision exemption ordinance where that they can't be 4 times as deep as they are wide. And staff went back and considered that and said, well, if it's over 10 acres, that provision doesn't really make sense and seems unnecessary for those types of lots. So we made an exemption for those large parcels so they don't have to fit in that narrow box requirement if you're making smaller lots. So that's the only change that was made from our prior discussions in the prior bullet points that were presented to you. And myself and the Community Development Director, Ben Skipper, are here today to answer any questions or concerns that y'all might have.
I'll start off by saying that I appreciate the work, Mr. Jackson, you've done, and Mr. Skipper as well. I know you all have worked hard and worked with the commissioners. We have been trying to speak with you, and we've had people from the community even come in and have some additional meetings. You know, I think we're very close, in my opinion, of having a good document here. A lot of compromises. No one industry or one individual's thought processes are going to capture everything in the document. But there were a few things that I wanted to talk about, and some of this may be splitting hairs or half a dozen one way or 6 the other. But when we started this off, one thing that I know I talked about is that we wanted to make everything make sense, or where did a number or where did something derive from? Could we, without hesitation, explain how we arrived at something, not just that it was a compromise, but what was the number or what was the language reflective of? So one of the items we talked about, I think if there's 35 or more lots, that would come back before the Board of Commissioners regardless, just to be approved. That's, if you look at that, that's about 140 acres. So my thought process was, someone might say, well, where does the 35 lots come from? So I was thinking along the lines, could we look at that at acreage? Could we say something above 100 acres or above 150 acres? Would be something that would come back to the Board of Commissioners, not necessarily an arbitrary number that wasn't really reflective of anything. We talked about the split situation, that we were trying to close the gap and not having someone being able to come in and split 4 or less lots on Monday, doing the same thing on Tuesday, and doing the same thing on Wednesday. And the current language, I think, is down to 12 months before you could do any additional split. I'm not saying that that number is correct or not, but in the same note, I do worry. I know there are some companies out there or individuals that they may try to sell larger tracts of lots if they can, and I wonder, is this going to force people to do the very bare minimum at 4 acres, whereas if we allow them to possibly split more than one time within a 12-month period, maybe within a couple of months they would sell a 20-acre tract out of a larger tract that maybe they had purchased, instead of forcing them to have to put together the maximum density, if you will, on the front end. We talked about flag lots. I think there was a number reached at 7-acre minimum. Maybe that's the number, maybe it's not. but I don't know that I know exactly where that number is reflective back to. One of the things that was discussed is a lot of the plats brought before us was between an 8 and 15 acres on flag lots, so that minimum would definitely be below that number. But I'm thinking in terms of what do I reflect that 7 back to? I'm thinking of the number 5. If you consider the flag pole in the flag and say that's an acre, and then you're adding the 1 acre to the 4 acres, that's the ag minimum, then you would reach the 5, and you can easily explain where that number comes from. I'm not saying I'm advocating for the 5 over the 7. What I'm saying is, going back to my original theory, how do I explain to the constituent that asks me, where does this number or where did this verbiage come from? So that's, one thing that's kind of floating out there. We talked about possibly removing the pavement requirement, and I know there's some commissioners that have discussed this about possibly having it be, the developer would be required to bring the road up adjacent to the width of the property that they had purchased to a Class 2 level. And what that would do is it would prevent, we have a lot of dirt roads in the county that are basically one-lane traffic. So instead of forcing them to go all the way to pave it, because we have constituents that come before us and say, hey, we don't want our road paved, maybe backing off of that, but in the same note, for safety reasons, making sure that they would have to, on the front end, bring it up to a Class 2, which means essentially 2-lane traffic, that you can go either way without someone having to pull off into a ditch. So I thought that was a good compromise that could be adjusted on. The other thing is, we began this process by advertising in the papers, our local papers, and I would kind of like to see us end by doing the same thing. There were a few people that represent some different trades that I'm not able to meet with now that all of this has been put together. And Mr. Jackson, like I said, yourself and Mr. Skipper have done an excellent job, but they're not able to meet before next Tuesday. So I would like the board to consider to possibly vote on this in January. I've went over my reasons of some additional things I'd like clarification from. I understand every point that I bring up may not be something that's satisfied in the document, but there are some other people I'd like to meet with that are still out because of Thanksgiving holidays that were out of town that I can't meet with before next Tuesday. I know at some point we need to pass this and we need to move forward, but in the same note, this is not something that's going to be changed every couple of months, and I wanted us to think as hard as we can about unintended consequences. And I know there's been some citizens that have sent in some emails that I've taken under very heavy consideration that basically says you're never going to fix everything in one moment. You have to at some point come to a consensus as best you can and move on, and I respect that. But we've been so many years without changing this, I don't know that one more month is going to do harm. I think it could do some good to try to bring the board together to try to finalize some of these other consensus points. Overall, it's a very good document. Overall, it's a very good collaboration, I think, of everyone trying to come as close to as they can. But those are my thoughts. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Madam Chair.
I'd like to say just a couple things. One is, I think what we have before us, I can very largely support. It strikes a good balance, I think, between controlled growth and yet not unduly restricting or regulating what landowners can do with their property. I got that as a complaint before, and I think government keeping out of people's business as much as possible is a positive thing. I think what we have is a good balance. I am for informing the public and, of course, supporting transparency, but I haven't gotten any calls from the public in the last couple of months. I have kept in touch with a couple groups that represent the ag community as well as the real estate development community. I've gotten some feedback from them, but again, nothing new recently. So I think feedback, as far as I'm concerned, is largely over. But I support transparency, and as long as, though, it doesn't bring us into any jeopardizing situation, which maybe we can consider. I'm with you, Commissioner Chance, on the 35 or more lots, putting that instead into some acreage terminology, whether that's 100 acres or 150, I don't think it really matters, whatever we decide. Personally, I think I would represent my constituency more if we stuck with the 7-acre minimum on the flag lots and said, well, the support there is really what is in place and what's historically been in place. I am for removing the paving and instead going with just the 60-foot right-of-way. I was initially more in favor of the paving, but the more I think about it, I think all things like that do is create a boondoggle for the county, in that we may have strips of pavement in between strips of gravel, and that wouldn't look so nice either, as well as it brings about a situation where I think a developer could easily transfer those costs to the landowner, in that he or she as a developer would give less for the property. So in essence, what we're trying to do as far as make the developer pay may not come about and materialize. So anyway, that's all the comments I have on that, and thanks for, yes, all of community development and the attorneys, and especially Avery. I know he's fielded a lot of things, and I appreciate all that's been done in this effort, as well as, like I say, the ag group I've been dealing with, especially Dee Perry. Thank you, and John Denny has provided a lot of great feedback as well, and Dwayne Hicks as well. And I appreciate Dwayne's efforts as far as getting this to the real estate and providing feedback there. So that's, as the movie says, about all I've got to say about that.
Any more comments, questions, or concerns for staff from the other board members?
Well, I have a question concerning the 35 or more lots in the development, and Avery, you'll probably have to answer this.
I've heard might be better on that
Well,
one too.
we might need Ben up here. All right, if we, I'm good with the document like it is, but I hear you on the acreage, and I've heard that from more than one person. Okay, now the way it's written now, we have it with 35 or more lots in the development. That's the way it's written now, correct?
Comes before the Board of Commissioners.
Comes before the Board of Commissioners.
35 or more.
Okay, well, if we change that to an acreage, could we change that and still vote on this document Tuesday night? But we would have to decide that here and now what that's going to be. Is that correct?
If 4 commissioners say that they're going to vote in favor of that change, then we can write the document that way so that there will be a written document before the board that can be voted on.
And just, and kind of back what the Commissioner Chance talked about, he asked me this question, and it's 148 acres plus or minus leads you to 35 lots or 35 lots. I think as far as the Board of Commissioners go, I think you understand your constituency the best in what terminology they will understand it the best. You know, sometimes in government we can get into too many acronyms and jargons and too many things. So what does the farmer understand in your district? Does he understand 35 lots better, or does he understand 150 acres better? I think it's potato, but that's just me. I understand it. So, you know, and it's kind of, I'm not going to go and take over any IT's job anytime soon. So I don't. I just know how to turn the box on and make it work. So.
Well, we're looking at this on agricultural property, right?
Right, and let me tell you a little bit more what I'm thinking about. You know, there's approximately 10 or more tracts in this county that's still over 1,000 acres with easements and logging roads as access. So one So one contemplation that I was talking with Avery about is the what-if clause. What if somebody did want to come and buy up 2,000 acres and just develop this huge subdivision and then take these rules and use them against us? So that's really where the 35 lots or 150 acres comes from. It gives the community, the adjoining landowners, the Board of Commissioners, the school board, the water authority, the fire department. It really becomes a development of such a scale that we really need to talk about that. And I think that's kind of what community development was looking for. You know, we can spend the day chasing rabbits or chasing bears, and to me, that's a bear. You know, a guy doing 10 lots, it's just not, you know, it's just not one of those things. So that's, just to kind of give you the mindset of where we were going with that, we was kind of thinking, you know, there are some big tracts out there. So it was some of those opportunities if someone did want to take these rules and then use them against you, because, you know, the rule can be two-sided. So that's where we was coming from, is on these larger tracts. It gives the Board of Commissioners, education, fire department, all the public services, water authority, fire department, again, you know, a shot to look at it and make comments, stipulations to those.
Are you okay with the 150 concept, or would you rather it?
Well, yeah, 150. Mine was at 148. 148, 150 is 35, so. And again, I was just trying to get a realistic number of what I'm seeing in the marketplace. That's what I'm seeing in the marketplace, is 150 acre tracts and smaller.
So if someone has 150 acres and only wants to divide it by 5, you want them to come before this board because it says 150? Or do you want to stick to the density thing of 35?
Well, I think it would be the same difference. They would be developing that amount of acreage, correct? I mean, that,
well,
or is it?
Ironically, you just asked the question a better way. So if it's 155 acres and I want to make 10 tracts out of it,
They got to come before this
now
board.
it has to come before the Board of Commissioners. So if you stick an acreage number on it, the chairman is correct, and that is something, Avery, I didn't think about. And I think that's what we all struggle with in trying to draft a document. We will all fall short of being perfect. But the chairman's point is exactly true. If we have a 155 acre tract and the guy wants to do 5 acre mega tracts, well, now you're looking at it.
So that would have to come before us.
That'd have to come before you.
Okay, and if he divided it into 15 acre lots, or 10, he would have to wait, under the way this is written, he's gonna have to wait 12 months to split them again, is that correct?
No, that's something I want everyone to understand fully. What we have is I was looking for addressing what I see is my typical lot split, which is, I would say, 90% of the lots in my office, which are not developer generated. Tonight on the Board of Appeals meeting, I have 7 variances on the agenda for things as such as a man's got 23 acres, wants to cut off a tract for his child, and he only has 288 feet of road frontage, so he needs a 12-foot variance. So what I was looking for is when you're dividing 4 lots or less, you give community development the authority to reduce some of those setbacks, work within the parameters that maybe it's not exactly 4 times as long as it is wide, but it's 4 times as long and 2 feet. Where I could have that 20% variance to a setback or to a little bit of road frontage. That is only on 4 lots or less, which is what I'm seeing with estates. You know, not everybody owns 20 acres, but they got 3 heirs. So, 200 acres, but, you know, they have these smaller tracts, and they don't all, and ironically, we don't have a lot of 300-foot road frontage properties in the county as it is. So when we're dealing with 4 lots or less, I'm asking the board to give me those 20% variance powers to work with those constituents that's trying to give 4 acres to a child, a parent, or sell a piece off. That is for people that are typically already living here. When you go to 5 lots to 35 lots, well, now you're a developer, in my opinion. You are actively looking for raw land to subdivide, to build houses on. And I'm asking for no variances on that situation. The rules are the rules. And for developers, they like a set of rules that everybody has to abide by, because then that gives them the know what they can pay or not pay for the property. Because his rules will be equal to his competition's rules. Just so you understand that. So what I'm looking for is 5 lots to 35 lots is a developer. No variances from community development. But if it's Commissioner Fuller, who owns 30 acres out there in Clem Lowell, and he wants to give his son 4, and he only has 300 feet of road frontage, and you have, 300 feet is the current requirement, and you only have 210. Well, then we have those administrative powers to grant that. But if you see what I'm seeing, all I'm seeing is one split.
Right.
From the father, parent, to the child, and that's why it's 4 or less.
Okay.
Is one set of rules. 5 lots to 35 lots is the developer's rules, and they all got the same rules, and they all play by the same rules, and when they're purchasing land, they know what the rules are.
Madam Chair, to your point about the number of lots versus acreage thing, yes, I totally see what you mean. Isn't it typical, though, that when a developer, if we're talking about the estate lot development side, which we
Sure.
are, would necessarily want to divide typically as much as possible in order to get as much return? So you would try to get as many lots as you could out of a 200 acre piece of property.
Right.
And if we did, or left it as the 35, then if your example scenario was true, then if they wanted to do 20 acres and have 35 lots, that would be a 700 acre piece of property, which is a big chunk of property in any jurisdiction. But
right.
So I mean,
see,
but that's how, I mean, we can't get this perfect.
that's exactly right.
So-
No, we can't, but I'm a commissioner who supports smart growth, and
Yeah.
whenever anybody's gonna bring density to the county, I
Yeah.
would for one like to know. And I don't wanna know when I'm riding down the road and I see it.
Yeah.
I would like to know before and and I want constituents to have a say in it. I want people to know about it because they live here too. And there's a reason. This is what people forget. There's a blend in Carroll County, okay? We have industry in Carroll County, we have rural in Carroll County, and we have a little suburbs and, just a little bit of everything in Carroll County. Everybody's forgetting that if we keep developing everything around us, we're not gonna be that anymore. So we gotta be smart about what we're doing. So we can kick the can with this down the road if we want to, but we're going to deal with it. And we're going to deal with it between the time of now and then, and unfortunately, you guys are having to deal with it all the time.
Right.
And so I've heard people say, there's no problem with what's going on. Yes, there is a problem with what we have, because now we need to put the rules in place, and we need to follow the rules. And like you said, set a set of rules that everybody can follow.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
And if it's something dense in the county, we need to know about it. I mean, that's
agree.
just how I feel about it.
Yeah. And being now that you've explained that, I can see it 35, with 35 lots, or I can see it with acres. Either way, it makes sense to me. But I also, sitting here, and I'm not a developer, but I can see ways to abuse that. But we're getting abuses under the current system too.
Right.
So Commissioner McClendon's right. It gives us a framework. Okay, now I got a harder question.
Sure.
And I already know the answer to this, but I want everybody to understand this. The road situation. pavement versus gravel. Now, I know, after talking to Public Works, a gravel road is more expensive to maintain over time. And if we allow, and I was one of the ones that said I didn't see any sense in all this paving and curbing and everything that we're doing. And I understand a lot of the developers like pavement and curbing, even though it costs more money. Let's go back to this. We've got a piece of paved road, and then you got a developer comes in at the end of the paved road. I'm doing it backwards. We got a dirt road, and I know this where this happened. We got a dirt road, and the developer goes to the end of it. It doesn't make a lot of sense for us to tell him that he's at the end of that road and he's got to pave that road. And that's more or less, under the old ordinance, that's what we were telling him, that he had to pave where he's developing. Is that correct?
When you say the old, you mean the which old? 'Cause
What? I'm sorry.
which olds are you talking about?
So under the current subdivision regulations, yes, they would probably have to pave that or make some arrangement to pave it. There's a provision in the current subdivision regulations that allows for a development agreement for that paving. But that could be a requirement in there. Under our current exemptions, which is 4 lots or less, paving would not be required on that dirt road. And we're keeping that the same, that paving is not required for the 4 lots or less exemption, just like it is now. That's the same. The current subdivision regulations would require paving if you're doing a traditional subdivision. We're now saying that if you're doing internal streets, you still have to pave them, you don't have to curb and gutter them. If you are doing it next to a dirt road, you do have to either pave that dirt road if it adjoins pavement. If it doesn't adjoin pavement and it's at the end of the dirt road, that doesn't make sense. But you would enter into that development agreement with the county where you would pay the development impact fee that the county would use if the county is able to acquire the right-of-way for that road and pave it eventually, or the county would use to maintain that dirt road. When you cut up a bunch of lots on a dirt road, as you said, it's a lot more expensive to maintain. Community development, Public Works has to go out there and dump more gravel on there. They have to come by and scrape it more. The additional traffic on the dirt road causes a lot more maintenance, and dirt roads are already more expensive to maintain than paved roads. But that development impact fee would be used by Public Works to maintain that road until they could pave that road eventually one day.
And this would be a road that's got the correct right-of-way, so that when we get ready to pave it, we're not having to come back and start obtaining right-of-way from citizens.
That's correct. Any lots that are cut next to a county road would have to give the 60-foot right-of-way, which is what the county requires from all the citizens on the road for that road to be paved one day. So if you're cutting up tracks along the road, you've got to go ahead and give your 60 feet so that eventually the county, if it's able to get the right-of-way down the entire road one day, will be able to pave that road.
So this, and I'm not going to give you the name of the road, but it would eliminate, there is a road in my district that's a 1-lane dirt road that's got some really nice houses on it. And if we decided to go back and pave that road, we're going to have to obtain right-of-way from those citizens. Is that right?
That if we don't have enough, and traditionally on dirt roads we have 30-foot assumed right-of-way, and we need 60 feet to do it. And a lot of these houses on the dirt roads are only 100 feet back. So if you're talking about getting, and depending on how the road goes, you might have to get it all from one side or the other, right? You may not be able to get it from both sides equally. So you're talking about taking a significant chunk of somebody's front yard if they built within that 100 feet.
And if we did that on this one particular road that I'm thinking about, they're going to be sitting on the front porch with their feet in the road pretty much. So that's the sort of thing I want to make sure that we eliminate.
That's one of the things that we're trying to do, and was our, I guess, when we started and we talked about it at 911, that was one of the things that was brought up and that we tried to incorporate in that.
Okay.
Avery, while you're there, could you just speak maybe to the point of What we have here is a good balance, and it does not, the thrust of it is not to promote development, quote unquote. Because I know that is something that has been publicly stated, and I just would like to solidify that what we're doing is not to promote development at all. It's just more to Commissioner McClendon's point of to get good or to maintain good and ensure more controlled, balanced growth. And I really don't like the thought out there that what we're doing is promoting development, or that anything in here is a promote development agenda, because it's not.
I think when we listened to the public at the public meeting, the general consensus of the public was everybody kind of likes what Carroll County has been doing and the trajectory that Carroll County is on, and what community development has been doing. It's like Theron said at the last work session, when the variance becomes the rule, you need to change the rules to allow that. And
right.
That's what we're looking at. That the variance had become the rule, and so that needs to, we need to put that in writing so that everybody knows what those rules are and everybody has the same set of rules. And so that's what we attempted to do, listening to the public comment. And what we have is a balance. I mean, there are a lot of interest groups that have been heavily involved in watching this, and community development, and I'm sure each one of you has received a significant amount of feedback from that. Ben's met with a lot of people, I've met with a lot of people, we've listened to concerns and stuff, and I do think that this ordinance, or at least the attempt of it, was to strike a balance between everybody's competing interests and views. And you can ask 100 people about this and they're going to give you 100 different viewpoints on it, and it's impossible to make any one of those people happy. But what we've tried to do is incorporate a lot of their ideas, wishes, and wants, and put that into a compromised piece of legislation for y'all's review and consideration.
Yeah.
And I hope we've done that. I don't know if we have, but I hope we have. That was our goal.
Yeah, I think you've done a good job at it. Yeah.
So if there's no further discussion on this, I'm not going to put this on consent. I'm not going to ask you to put it on consent. So this, I will look for a motion and a second on Tuesday night concerning this item. Okay. At this point, there's not anything else on our agenda.